vehicle, it uses what we call the microsonic energy device.
Imagine a car that doesn't need gas, doesn't plug into a charger, and doesn't ever stop running. Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, it's not. It's real, and it's coming from Africa. One unassuming inventor from Zimbabwe just pulled off what the biggest automakers in the world couldn't even dream of, a self-charging car that defies everything we thought we knew about energy. While Tesla and other electric giants are still wrestling with charging networks and battery tech, Africa just dropped a bombshell, a car that powers itself. No cords, no fuel, just pure endless motion. Elon Musk himself called it impossible. But videos don't lie. It's running, and it's shaking the entire industry to its core. But here's the wildest part, Africa isn't just making one or two of these cars, it's gearing up for mass production. Could this be the invention that changes the future of transportation forever? Stay tuned, because this story only gets crazier from here. What's happening? While America is worried about semiconductor shortages, Africa quietly built an automotive empire. As headlines in the West fixated on supply chain disruptions and the latest Tesla models, an unexpected powerhouse was taking shape. Africa, often portrayed as an emerging market for imported cars, was transforming into a manufacturing hub of its own. This wasn't just about assembling foreign brands, Africa was designing and building its own vehicles, tailored to local conditions and demands. The shift was not driven by luxury or cutting-edge technology, but by necessity and innovation born from practical challenges. Take Morocco, for instance. In just 1 year, Morocco exported 400,000 vehicles, making it the continent's largest car exporter. South Africa's automotive sector also saw unprecedented growth, employing over 100,000 people and contributing significantly to the national economy. Meanwhile, Nigeria, known more for its oil industry than its car manufacturing, saw the rise of brands like Nissan Motors and Cancom Cars. These companies were not just assembling knockdown kits from global giants. They were building durable, reliable cars from the ground up with designs tailored to withstand Africa's unique challenges. The Western world remained largely oblivious to this industrial awakening. News outlets and analysts remained focused on Tesla's Cybertruck delays and union strikes in the United States, missing the quiet automotive revolution happening across the African continent. It wasn't just a manufacturing boom, it was a strategic shift. Instead of relying on Western supply chains, Africa was integrating local resources. Steel from Kenya, tires from Egypt, and upholstery from Nigeria were being incorporated into the production process. This regional collaboration not only reduced costs but also fostered a sense of economic unity among participating countries. What made Africa's approach distinct was its focus on practicality over luxury. While Tesla was busy crafting sleek designs and installing autonomous driving features, African manufacturers prioritized robustness and longevity. The goal was not to create high-tech marvels but reliable machines that could survive unpaved roads and unpredictable weather. This grounded approach resonated with local buyers who valued functionality over futuristic aesthetics. Africa wasn't just building cars, it was building a new automotive future. One where practicality trumped luxury and where local innovation outpaced imported ideas. The world wasn't prepared for this shift, and as African manufacturers continued to scale up, the global auto industry was forced to take notice. But what made these cars truly revolutionary wasn't just how they were built, it was how they survived. Tesla makes cars for highways. Africa makes cars for survival. In regions where dust storms, floods, and unpaved roads are a part of daily life, automotive needs differ drastically from those in sleek urban environments. African manufacturers understood this from the beginning. Instead of emulating Western models, they built cars designed to endure the harshest conditions. The result was a new breed of vehicle, resilient, adaptable, and purpose-driven. African cars are crafted with high ground clearance, reinforced suspensions, and dust-proof electronics. Unlike Tesla's sophisticated yet fragile systems, these vehicles are designed to handle rugged terrain without constant maintenance. They aren't just cars, they are survival machines. Built for multipurpose use, farmers can haul crops in the morning, families can transport children in the afternoon, and community leaders can traverse difficult terrain to reach remote villages. In many regions, these cars are lifelines, often the only means of reaching markets, schools, or hospitals. Tesla's electric cars, while technologically advanced, struggle in such environments. Charging infrastructure is sparse, and even where it exists, power reliability is a significant issue. Imagine trying to charge a Tesla Model Y in a village without consistent electricity. Impractical at best, impossible at worst. In contrast, African cars, built to be manually repaired, offer a practicality that luxury EVs simply cannot match. Africa didn't just build cars. They built machines to thrive where tech giants failed. This new wave of innovation was not just reshaping the local auto market, it was challenging the very concept of what a car should be. The real game changer wasn't how they were built. It's how China saw an opportunity to gain a strategic advantage. Where the West sees a threat, China sees an opportunity. While American automakers hesitated and European companies remained skeptical, China moved swiftly, recognizing the potential of Africa's self-charging car. Chinese investors began making quiet but decisive moves. They did not waste time debating the science. Instead, they focused on forming partnerships, funding research, and laying the groundwork for collaboration. China's pragmatic approach was simple: even if the technology seemed improbable, the payoff of being involved early was too great to ignore. Chinese firms started by forming joint ventures with African automotive startups. In Kenya, engineers from a prominent Chinese tech company began collaborating with local innovators to develop low-cost radio frequency converters. In Uganda, another team focused on refining the self-charging system for buses, aiming to make public transportation as independent as possible. From Ethiopia to Nigeria, partnerships blossomed, with China providing not just funding, but technical expertise. One of China's greatest strengths has always been its ability to industrialize rapidly and efficiently. While Western companies debated the legitimacy of the self-charging concept, Chinese manufacturers prepared to scale production. They saw potential not only for the African market, but also for exporting these vehicles to developing countries where charging infrastructure was non-existent. For China, this was not just about cars. It was about capturing an emerging segment of the automotive industry before anyone else could. Elon Musk watched with growing concern as China invested deeper. Tesla's second-largest market was China, and any collaboration between African and Chinese manufacturers posed a significant threat. If China could leverage this technology and produce affordable, self-sustaining vehicles, Tesla's position in Asia could be weakened considerably. Furthermore, China's willingness to innovate without requiring immediate proof of concept meant they could be ahead of Tesla if the technology proved viable. Strategically, China's involvement also had geopolitical implications. By aligning with African innovators, China positioned itself as a technological partner rather than a competitor. This narrative resonated well, as many African nations had grown wary of Western companies imposing strict standards and IP control. Instead of demanding ownership, China offered collaboration. For Musk, it was not just a technological race, it was also a battle for influence. Chinese automakers like BYD and Geely, which had already made significant inroads into electric vehicle production, now looked poised to incorporate self-charging technology. If successful, they could undercut Tesla's pricing and marketing strategy. Musk's vision of Tesla as the definitive leader of the electric car revolution was being challenged, not just technologically, but strategically. China's willingness to take risks, even when the science was not fully validated, posed an existential threat. And as China moved forward, the global electric vehicle market itself began to feel the impact EV market. When one invention threatens an entire industry, chaos is inevitable. The introduction of Africa's self-charging car sent shock waves through the electric vehicle market. Automakers who had invested billions in battery technology suddenly faced the possibility that their investments could become obsolete. The very premise of electric vehicles, recharging at stations or plugging in at home, was under threat. If cars could charge themselves, then why bother with an expansive charging network? Global automakers scrambled to reassess their strategies. Volkswagen, which had committed to a fully electric lineup by the next decade, began internally discussing how to pivot if self-charging technology proved viable. Ford and General Motors, both heavily invested in lithium-ion battery development, initiated research to evaluate how ambient energy could be harnessed for mobility. Even Toyota, traditionally more conservative in its approach to full electrification, started exploring partnerships to future-proof their portfolio. For years, Tesla had set the standard for what an electric vehicle should be: sleek, technologically advanced, and reliant on a network of proprietary chargers. Now, the industry faced a paradigm shift. Companies that had not invested in proprietary networks suddenly had an advantage, as they were not weighed down by sunk costs. Automakers without dedicated charging infrastructure could more easily pivot to new technologies. The most immediate impact, however, was on consumer perception. Buyers who had once seen Tesla as the pinnacle of innovation now wondered if a more practical and autonomous solution was emerging. People who had hesitated to buy electric cars due to charging concerns began reconsidering. The market dynamics were changing fast, and automakers knew that whoever adapted quickest would secure the next wave of electric vehicle buyers. Labor movements. As consumers started to rethink their choices, the world was starting to notice labor movements rally behind innovation in Africa. Automotive jobs are not just careers, they are lifelines. The rise of self-charging car production has sparked a labor movement across the continent, rallying behind this groundbreaking innovation. Workers in the automotive industry are not just building cars, they are becoming a part of a revolutionary shift that is changing how people perceive both labor and technology. VV. The manufacturing of self-charging cars has brought an economic revival to regions that have long struggled with unemployment and economic instability. Factories are bustling, communities are thriving, and the workers themselves feel a renewed sense of purpose. In South Africa alone, the automotive sector directly employs more than 100,000 people. These jobs are more than just a source of income, they are a means of social stability and upward mobility. Families that once struggled to make ends meet now see a path toward a more secure future. The self-charging car is not just a product, it represents an opportunity for communities to build wealth and sustain local economies. Workers in factories across Zimbabwe, Nigeria, and South Africa take pride in knowing they are part of something bigger than themselves, an innovation that could redefine the automotive landscape. One of the most striking aspects of this labor movement is its emphasis on human-centric production. Unlike Tesla's automation-heavy factories, African car plants prioritize skilled manual labor. Workers are trained not just to assemble parts but to understand the principles behind the technology. This hands-on approach fosters a deeper connection between the workers and the final product. They are not just laborious on an assembly line, they are innovators and engineers in their own right. This model has led to a strong sense of ownership among workers who feel personally invested in the success of the cars they build. Labor unions have also found renewed purpose in this automotive revolution. Instead of resisting new technologies, they are embracing the self-charging car as a pathway to sustainable jobs. Union leaders have been vocal about protecting workers' rights in this new industry, advocating for fair wages, safe working conditions, and opportunities for skill development. These unions see the automotive boom as a chance to redefine what it means to be a worker in the 21st century, a contributor to innovation rather than a casualty of automation. As production ramps up, African workers are not just spectators, they are active participants in a global conversation about the future of labor. They understand that this revolution challenges the traditional model of factory work, where machines increasingly replace human hands. In Africa, however, the story is different. Here, workers are not being pushed aside, they are being lifted up. They are part of a movement that values both human ingenuity and sustainable innovation. This unique approach to production is not just a technological breakthrough, it is a social one, reshaping how the world thinks about manufacturing. This labor movement is not just a reaction to innovation, it is a movement that rallies behind it. African workers are showing that embracing new technologies does not mean abandoning human involvement. In fact, they are proving that sustainable jobs and cutting-edge innovation can coexist, creating a new paradigm where workers and technology thrive together. The battery economy crisis. But while African labor movements celebrate, another industry is spiraling into crisis, the global battery economy. The self-charging car is not just an automotive breakthrough, it is a direct threat to the global battery economy. For years, the electric vehicle market has been synonymous with lithium-ion batteries. These batteries, mined from countries like Bolivia, Chile, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, have powered the green revolution. But the self-charging car, with its ability to power itself without conventional batteries, is shaking the foundations of this multi-billion-dollar industry. Battery manufacturers around the world are beginning to panic. Companies that invested heavily in lithium extraction and battery production are facing a grim reality. If self-charging technology becomes mainstream, the demand for lithium could plummet. The economic implications are enormous. Major corporations like Panasonic and CATL, which have built their business models around battery production, watching this innovation with growing concern. Even Tesla, which sources lithium from mines across the globe, finds itself in a precarious position. The future they had banked on, a world powered by lithium-ion technology, now seems less certain. Mining economies are also feeling the pressure. Countries that built their economic stability on the lucrative lithium trade are questioning their future. In Bolivia, where lithium mining has been a significant part of the national economy, local communities are increasingly worried about job losses. Similar concerns are echoing through Chile and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. If the self-charging car truly makes batteries obsolete, these countries could face an economic collapse akin to what coal-dependent regions experienced during the transition to renewable energy. The environmental impact of declining battery demand is also complex. On one hand, reduced mining could alleviate the environmental destruction caused by lithium extraction, which often involves the displacement of local communities and significant ecological degradation. On the other hand, the sudden economic downturn in mining regions could lead to social instability. Workers who relied on mining jobs may find themselves without viable alternatives, leading to potential unrest and migration. The battery crisis is not just about technology, it is about the very structure of the global economy. Investment in battery production plants worth billions of dollars could be rendered obsolete. Investors who poured their resources into lithium futures are now rethinking their strategies, wondering if they bet on the wrong horse. As the self-charging car gains traction, the once seemingly unshakable battery economy now looks vulnerable. This crisis is forcing both companies and countries to reconsider their dependence on a single resource. The rise of radio frequency-powered vehicles could mean a paradigm shift not just in transportation but in global trade. The world is watching closely, knowing that if Africa's self-sustaining technology becomes the norm, the battery market could collapse entirely. As the battery economy grapples with this potential upheaval, another force is at play. The consumer revolution is already underway. The consumer revolution. The consumer revolution. What if the car of the future wasn't just electric but completely self-sustaining? Consumers around the globe are beginning to ask this question as news of Africa's self-charging cars spreads. While the automotive industry grapples with the implications, ordinary people are captivated by the sheer practicality of a car that powers itself. The concept of never needing to refuel or recharge is not just appealing, it is transformative. For the first time, the idea of truly independent mobility is within reach. The initial appeal is obvious: cost savings. Traditional electric vehicles, while more economical than gasoline-powered cars, still come with the ongoing expense of charging. Even when using at-home chargers, electricity costs can add up over time, especially in regions where energy prices fluctuate. Self-charging cars eliminate this cost entirely. For working-class families, students, and rural communities, the potential to save thousands of dollars annually is a game-changer. Beyond cost, consumers are drawn to the idea of not being tethered to infrastructure. In many parts of the world, public charging stations are scarce or unreliable. Even in developed countries, finding a working charger can be a hassle. The thought of being able to drive anywhere without worrying about battery levels is liberating. African manufacturers have tapped into a desire that many people did not even realize they had: the freedom to travel without limitations. In developing regions, the self-charging car is seen as a practical necessity rather than a luxury. In rural areas where electricity is sporadic or non-existent, conventional electric vehicles make little sense. The self-charging model, however, aligns perfectly with the needs of people who live off the grid. Farmers can transport goods to market without worrying about fuel costs, and community leaders can travel between villages without relying on unreliable charging infrastructure. Even in urban areas where electric vehicles are more common, the concept of not needing to charge at all is creating buzz. Tech enthusiasts are fascinated by the engineering challenge, while everyday drivers appreciate the practical benefits. Social media is ablaze with discussions, and automotive forums are filled with debates about whether the self-charging car will replace traditional EVs. Some early adopters are already expressing interest in importing African models, eager to test the concept for themselves. The rise of this technology is also influencing consumer expectations. No longer are people satisfied with long charging times or limited battery life. Automakers are feeling the pressure to innovate, knowing that once consumers taste true energy independence, they may never go back. Tesla's loyal customer base, once unwavering, is showing signs of curiosity. Musk's dismissive stance on the technology has not deterred them from asking the big question: if it works, why not embrace it? And as consumers worldwide demand change, the industry itself must decide whether to adapt or be left behind. Tesla's desperate counter-move. Elon Musk is not one to back down from a challenge, but the self-charging car from Africa is unlike anything Tesla has faced before. As reports of Maxwell Chikumbutso's invention reached Silicon Valley, Musk and his team were thrown into crisis mode. Tesla, which had spent billions of dollars perfecting electric vehicle technology and building a vast network of charging stations, suddenly faced an existential threat. The idea of a car that never needs charging is not just disruptive, it is catastrophic for Tesla's business model. Musk knew that if the African self-charging car gained mainstream acceptance, Tesla's competitive edge would evaporate overnight. The initial reaction from Tesla was one of outright dismissal. Musk publicly criticized the concept on social media, calling it scientifically impossible and cautioning his followers against falling for what he labeled as pseudoscience. However, as more reports emerged and videos of the self-charging car in action spread across the internet, the skepticism within Tesla started to waver. Musk called for internal investigations to understand how the technology might work. Engineers at Tesla were tasked with reverse engineering the concept based on the limited information available, but progress was slow. The very idea of drawing enough power from ambient radio frequencies to drive a car seemed too far-fetched to many within the company. Publicly, Tesla continued to downplay the innovation. Musk doubled down on his criticism, emphasizing that any vehicle defying the laws of thermodynamics could not possibly function as advertised. Yet privately, Tesla executives began drafting contingency plans. One option discussed was to create a budget-friendly model that could compete with the affordability of African vehicles. Another was to explore partnerships with African manufacturers, hoping to gain insight into the self-charging technology. Musk, however, was hesitant to pursue collaboration, wary of being seen as conceding to a technology he had publicly condemned. Investor confidence in Tesla began to waver as rumors circulated about the self-charging car gaining traction. Stock prices dipped, and financial analysts speculated whether Tesla could maintain its dominance in a world where electric cars did not need charging stations. Musk, known for his bold strategies, decided to launch a new initiative, Project Infinite. The goal was to develop a new model that could at least partially mimic the self-sustaining characteristics of Chikumbutso's invention. While Tesla had made significant strides in battery technology, the challenge now was to incorporate a self-sustaining energy system without abandoning its current infrastructure. And while Tesla fought to stay relevant, the world faced a new challenge, redefining the future of mobility. The future of mobility. The future of mobility was no longer just electric, it was self-sustaining. The self-charging car from Africa posed a fundamental question to the automotive industry: why build vehicles that rely on external power sources when cars can power themselves? As automakers around the world grappled with this new reality, one thing became clear: mobility was about to change forever. The idea of owning a car that never needs refueling or recharging struck a chord with consumers globally. In regions where charging infrastructure was sparse, the appeal was undeniable. Rural communities, small businesses, and even urban commuters saw the value in a car that offered freedom from power dependency. The concept of sustainable mobility was no longer just about reducing emissions, but about eliminating reliance on charging networks altogether. Governments too had to rethink their policies. Countries that had heavily invested in building charging stations faced the dilemma of whether to continue funding such projects. Some began shifting resources toward research in self-sustaining energy, hoping to catch up with the African innovation. Environmental groups, once focused solely on electric vehicles as the green solution, now had to acknowledge that true sustainability might come from entirely new technologies. But while the promise of self-sustaining cars was compelling, it raised new challenges. How would urban infrastructure adapt if charging stations became obsolete? What would happen to the battery supply chain, a multi-billion-dollar industry now facing potential decline? The transition to self-charging vehicles was not just a technological shift, it was an economic and social transformation. As the world prepared to embrace a new mobility paradigm, Africa remained at the forefront, continuing to innovate while the rest of the world played catch-up. A leap beyond fossil fuels. Africa's leap beyond fossil fuels was more than just an automotive victory, it was a fundamental shift in how societies approached energy. For decades, the global economy had been tied to oil, with industries and nations rising and falling based on fuel availability. Now, Africa was charting a path where mobility was not just electric, but entirely independent of conventional energy. By adopting self-sustaining vehicles, Africa had shown that the future did not have to be dictated by oil companies or charging networks. Instead, the continent was embracing a model where energy was ambient, constant, and accessible. The economic ramifications were profound. As oil-dependent nations faced declining demand and a shrinking market, Africa had not just disrupted the automotive industry, it had redefined what energy independence could look like. The world watched in awe as the continent proved that sustainable innovation could thrive without fossil fuels. And in doing so, Africa was not just catching up with the world, it was leading it. So is this the breakthrough that changes everything, or just another tech dream that's too good to be true? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the future of mobility, make sure to subscribe and join our community for more cutting-edge stories.